Washington Post. I'm sure you've seen it. And in it, he writes that Donald Trump has planted the seeds of doubt in the minds of many Americans that our institutions aren't functioning properly. And if the president doesn't trust the intelligence community, law enforcement, the press, the military, the Supreme Court, the medical professionals, election officials, and postal workers, then why should we? And if Americans stop believing in the system of institutions, then what is left but chaos? What message should the Democrats be delivering this week as we have a president who has, in fact, committed a full-out assault on all of these institutions?
Well, Democrats believe in America. We believe in American democracy, and we believe that our institutions should always be improved, always be reformed, but never be dismantled like what's happening right now. You know, when we look at other countries, developing countries around the world, or even if you were sizing up the state of the U.S., let's say 200 years ago, you know, what are some of the basic things you'd look at? Can they run an election? How do they do at handling disease? Do they have a functioning postal service? I mean, these are the basic yardsticks of civilization, and we are falling back on all of them. And I think the Admiral's right. The president seems to have a project of undermining the confidence of the American people in our own institutions in a way that undercuts democracy itself. And at this point, you know, the president's losing. If nothing changes, he will lose big in November. We, the public, need to be prepared for the president to attack the democratic system itself after the fact, to attack the legitimacy of the election that will have unseated him. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We got a lot of work to do to make sure those election results are the right results. That's part of what's kicking off today with the Democratic National Convention. But we've also got to be ready on the back end to resist any effort to undermine the legitimacy of American democracy itself.
Casey Hunt is with us and has a question for you. Casey.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. You are one of the rising stars at the convention this week, as we mentioned earlier. And obviously, your presidential campaign earned a lot of notice and accolades. Your performance in Iowa that clearly sets you up for your own political future. So you may not want to answer a direct question about whether you would take a job in a possible Biden administration. So if you won't do that, and I would ask you to, what kind of work do you want to be doing in the next 4 years if, in fact, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win this next election?
Well, what I know is that I will do everything I can to support the success of a Biden-Harris administration. And to answer your question, I would love a chance to return to public service if that makes sense, and that's what the new president decides. It might make sense for me to be supporting.
I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah, no, I love it. Public service is the most rewarding experience of my life. It may or may not make sense in the near future, but what I know is that I'll be doing everything I can to support this incoming administration, just as right now I'm doing everything I can to make sure there, in fact, is a Biden-Harris administration. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work on the issues that were such a big part of the campaign, whether it's service and the need to create more opportunities for national service, civilian as well as military for Americans, whether it's dealing with issues like mental health, which I've never seen a bigger gap between how often I got asked about issues by reporters as a candidate and how much I got asked about a given issue by voters as when it came to mental health, which came up over and over and over. I remain deeply interested in America's credibility around the world and you know, how this country is going to be able to continue to lead. Climate, there's so many issues that need attention from all of us, and who knows exactly what shape that'll take. But I know between now and November, I've got to do everything in my power to make sure that we take back the White House. And with my organization, Win the Era, we've got a 501c4 and a PAC. There's information at wintheera.com. We're backing a lot of other fantastic candidates because we must not make the mistake of treating the presidency like the only office that matters. You know, Republicans were very smart about this starting a generation ago, building up majorities, building up power in our American system that puts so much power in those local and state offices. We've got to make sure we're paying attention to that too. And the good news is we have amazing candidates, not just the leaders who are known nationally, but phenomenal leaders in the Democratic Party running for these state and local seats.
Mayor Pete, I've seen as the lineup, when you are speaking and others, it shows some of the progress that we've seen. I remember when I ran for president in 2004, the party was struggling with same-sex marriage issues. I've seen you well received everywhere, from dining with me in Harlem to South Carolina, people mobbing you. So we've brought the country a long way there. Kamala Harris on the ticket. I remember as a kid, Shirley Chisholm couldn't get there. The progress we've made, though, is at risk. And I think part of what I would ask you, are you during the campaign going to talk about the progress made, but also that it's under attack if this present administration is reelected, who has made no secret about they are against many of the things that we've fought to achieve in this country from various different aspects of the populace?
That's exactly right. You know, there's a danger because our progress has been so extraordinary and so powerful in so many ways as a country. There's a danger of assuming that it's permanent. It's not. We can move backwards in any number of these areas. And part of what I'm hoping to speak to is the progress that has been made. I mean, you look at an issue like LGBTQ equality. You know, it was less than a decade ago, and Joe Biden was ahead even of the Democratic Party when he came out and said that marriage equality should be the law of the land. This change has been swift, and if you look at the change between 2010 and 2020, it's extraordinary, but none of that is secure. None of that is guaranteed, especially when you have an administration that is really committed to dismantling a lot of these rights and a lot of these protections. Now, the other side of it, though, is the positive side. It's what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their administration could deliver. I mean, if we've seen this kind of change between 2000 and 2020, imagine the kind of change we can see between 2020 and 2030, 2040, if we have the right kind of leadership.
Right. And I'm just curious, given your run for the presidency and being so super young, and I just wondered what you learned along the way. What was your biggest takeaway as you build your future, hopefully, in politics?
You know, I'm still processing some of what I learned on the campaign trail because it's just it's an out-of-body experience. You feel like you're in the whole country at the same time because you're moving around so much. But the biggest things I take away have to do with the desire for belonging that you feel in so many ways in so many communities. People have been excluded. People have been seeking ways to connect with fellow Americans. And to me, that also creates a huge opportunity to really realign the coalition of Democrats right now. I mean, the number of times I'd give what I thought was a pretty progressive speech, and somebody would come up to me afterwards and say, you know, I'm a Republican, but I think I'm going to support you this year. And part of me is thinking that's something. If you think about some of the policies that I'm pushing forward on, but it's because it's not just about ideology for people. It's about a sense that our country can move forward. I see that sense animating the party right now. I know from getting to know them up close that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris believe in that project of knitting together and unifying the American people. And that's what we need more of because, you know, we don't have to take as given that we're going to be locked into these kind of tribal partisan lines forever. The American majority is way out ahead of what you see represented in Washington today. And 2020, for all the darkness and the difficulty, it could go down in history as the year that we began to shift toward a new openness and a new sense of belonging in this country.
Pete Buttigieg, thank you so much. It's always great to see you. Thanks for being on the show this morning. And coming up, at least a dozen states are preparing to mount a legal defense against interference with the Postal Service ahead of the